Welcome to FI News Review. I'm your host, 𝗵𝗵𝗏. In this episode, we're going to dig into the top trends from the National Restaurant Association Show 2024 with none other than the Food Institute's very own Chris Campbell. He is the VP of Content and Client Relationships. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brittany, thanks for having me. Really excited to be back on the show and kind of break down what was going on at NRA last week.
I'm excited to dive in. So, what can you tell us about the show?
So I think on a personal level, it's worth noting this was the first time I've actually been to the NRA show, which has been surprising to a lot of people I've said that to. But I think there was a lot of buzz on the floor. And in talking to veterans that have been there many times and even following up on LinkedIn and other social media channels, really seems that there was a big buzz at this year's show, and people were really having a good time and really excited about the technologies that were on display and all the companies that were there. So I think that's really important to kind of start off with. But as far as trends go, I think technology was really at the forefront of this year's show, which is probably not that surprising. From robotic arms to AI systems, we really saw it all on the show floor. And a couple of ideas that I had here to talk about. I did a interview with Radiant Technologies as they showcased a bunch of their AI platforms that could provide even customized ads to people depending on their demographics. They also showed us how their digital signboard systems can showcase out of stocks to better prepare guests for those moments as well. So I thought that was a really cool development and, kind of utilization of technology that can help people in the food service side. We also had the opportunity to go to the RoboCook booth, which was appropriately unmanned. And they were showcasing their robotic cooking arms. They had one, I believe, that was working on a griddle style, flat top, and they had one that was also working on, deep fryers. It was really interesting. I think this is something we're going to see more and more interest in from the food service sector, especially when you have California pumping up the minimum wage to $20 an hour. I think these kinds of technological solutions are going to be more and more attractive to a lot of food service operators. And then the last one I'll bring up real quickly, 𝗏𝗶𝗱 partnered with point-of-sale.cloud for a kiosk and food locker system that seemed perfect for corporate and other locations too. Seemed really convenient. They had a section that was also doing coffee. They also had one that was directly for food. So you just order it on the kiosk and then you get a notification that was ready in the lockers. Really interesting technology that kind of removes that need for some of the human labor that you would usually have in a situation like that. So I thought that was a pretty interesting development as well.
What other trends can you tell us about from the show?
So I think convenience was another one that was pretty big, and we can go right back to that 𝗏𝗶𝗱 and point-of-sale.cloud, example for that convenience. It's really convenient as a consumer to just go up to the kiosk, put in your order, and then you just sit and wait for it to be ready inside those food lockers. So I know that was already kind of part of the technology aspect, but I think there's a convenience aspect there as well for the consumer, and I think that's something that a lot of consumers are looking for. I also saw some convenience on the back of house side too. We spent a little time with Wonder. And it's really been amazing to watch as they've kind of pivoted from this van solution where they would drive up to your home and cook a dinner for you to more of a, ghost kitchen slash, group kitchen kind of sector that allows for in-person eating, allows for delivery, and also allows for pickup. They partnered with a bunch of celebrity chefs and they have these turbo cookers that can cook a pizza in about 5 minutes. It was really impressive, and they're able to put out a bunch of different types of foods. So it was really interesting to see that. And I think the last one I'll bring up here too is we spent some time with Nestle Professional. They had a bunch of cooking demonstrations on the show floor, making a bunch of delicious products. Using some of their in-house solutions, basically quicker ways for restaurant operators to get really strong flavors into their dishes and also to make them more repeatable. So saw convenience for consumers, and we also saw convenience for operators as well. And I think that was another big trend we saw this year at the show.
Chris, I know you wrote a plant-based article. Can you recap the plant-based scene at NRA for us?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that I've been thinking about for a couple of years now. Plant-based had a meteoric rise in 2020, but recently we've seen a little bit of a downslide in the sector. I had a great podcast with David Benzaquin earlier this year on that very topic. One of the things he talked about was that funding in the sector was kind of drying up, and perhaps there were some companies that shouldn't have been getting funding that were. That said, I think one of the biggest issues that plant-based has had is just taste. You're going after a much larger market share than just vegans and vegetarians when you're creating this. And a lot of those consumers are expecting very specific things when it comes to taste. And I think the good news is at NRA this year, I got to sample some products that I think kind of meet that new threshold for the consumer when it comes to taste. There was really a heavy emphasis on plant-based seafood products. We had some from Boldly and the Planet Food Co., which candidly really impressed me. Dio was also there. They had their new formulation of cheese available for trial, and we got to try one of their pizza products, which was also pretty good. And was really impressed with how the cheese itself, the plant-based cheese, melted and kind of spread like a regular cheese would when you were eating the product. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And it was also nice to be able to catch up with Rebellious Foods and Prime Roots, who I've also interviewed on the podcast. Rebellious creates a plant-based chicken nugget product. I was able to have it as almost a chicken parm nugget and also one that was like a chicken and waffle nugget, and those were both pretty good. And we also were able to spend some time with Prime Roots, and I got to try some of their mycelium mushroom-based deli meat products. And I was really impressed with those as well. And I think that's a sector that we could see some growth in the year to come here. So, time will tell at the end of the day here if plant-based can grow further than it did when we saw that meteoric rise in 2020. But I think, a lot of these younger companies are starting to make some strides on the taste front. And I think that's really where we'll be able to see some uptick in consumer behavior if it comes to, those purchasing patterns will really just become a thing when it comes to taste. So really interesting to see that. And I think I have some higher hopes this year after the NRA show when I take a look at this sector compared to maybe where I was earlier in the year when I was talking to David about the sector overall.
Chris Campbell, FI's VP of Content and Client Relationships. Chris, thank you so much for your insights.
Thanks for having me, Brittany. Looking forward to the next time.
And as always, you can check out more from the Food Institute by clicking on this playlist. Until next time, I'm 𝗪𝗠 𝗂𝗏.